This week I'm talking about the difference between taking responsibility and taking the blame, and the power that comes with that. Welcome to the MindFuckery Podcast, which is FeedSpot's 5th must-listen-to podcast on emotional abuse. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and in here we explore areas others are fear to tread. Through my own personal journey, I know how much this hurts and how confusing life becomes. So many questions, no closure, and no real answers. I've been a woundologist for over 20 years. I'm the unintentional author of Finding Lily, the A to Z of emotional abuse and divorce matters. I help you clear past life wounds, ancestral trauma, and this life wounding. And as the founder of the Inner Healing Sanctuary, I've created Wound Talking, the original wound, and Quantum Glow. I'm on a mission to help educate as many people as I can on the effects of trauma on our lives and our children's lives, and healing the wounds of our mothers and our fathers. It stops here, it stops now, it stops with us. So welcome along for the journey of a lifetime. And as always, you are very, very welcome, whether you're new here, whether you're returning. I'm so pleased that you're on this journey because it is so empowering. It might be that you're right at the beginning, not knowing what's going on, not understanding, looking for answers, trying to name everyone. It might be that you're in the middle of it, in the middle of the gloop, breaking down, changing, and it might be that you're recognizing the power behind what you're doing. The reason I've picked this subject today is twofold, actually. I had two conversations. I thought it was yesterday or Sunday. The first one started talking about things that they'd achieved over the last month, or during October, actually, or over the last 6 weeks. And one of them was not feeling guilty, not getting upset about the reaction they would get from their ex, breaking those thought patterns and also the conversations in the head. And that's one of my areas that I love doing. I love changing those thought patterns, allowing people to reclaim back their power, holding that space for them. To me, it's just so powerful. So that was the conversation. I said, wow, feel that power. But this to me is, and I truly, truly believe this, the lessons that we are given the situations to learn and grow. And some of them are painful. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissistic person, if you grew up in that environment, and that is the second reason I wanted to talk about this, if you grew up in that environment, you've got woundings, you've got beliefs about yourself. That is the voice in your head. It's the voice that's talking to you, or one of multiple voices that are talking to you. And it isn't some form of schizophrenia or psychosis. We talk to ourselves thousands of times a day. I think it's something like 40,000 times a day. And if we're using words that are negative, they're going to be impacted. We pick up a lot of these statements and beliefs about ourselves way before we have the ability to pick them apart and ask, is that true? Is that true, what that person's just said about me? And a lot of the work that I do is not just healing the wounds, but changing the way that conversation goes, changing and challenging the voices in our heads. It's so powerful. So this is what I was saying. I truly believe that the lesson is claiming back the power, but it's not just that. It's claiming back the power by healing the wounds, but we're not just doing it for ourselves. It sounds like a song. I'm sure it is, actually. We're not just doing it for ourselves. We are doing it to heal the wounds of our ancestors. And our ancestors are our grandparents. They're our parents. They're our great grandparents, aunts and uncles. Our bloodline that goes back to, I don't know, the beginning, wherever you believe that is. And you're not just doing it for your ancestors in the past, you're doing it for the ones that are to come. And that is where the power is. You are clearing the patterns, the work that you do now on yourself. And some people aren't able to do that. They're not in that position at the moment to do that. And that's personal choice. Some people are drawn. I'm never going to. Like for me, it was like, I'm done repeating these patterns. I just don't get it. And I remember saying before my last relationship, in between two big relationships, I don't understand. This was a pattern that I'd picked up, or I could see, because I'm really good at spotting these. It was people, I meet these people and they think I'm absolutely amazing. And once we're in a relationship, it's the same thing. They want to change me. I hadn't realised that pattern had a name, didn't recognise it. I didn't know that they think I'm amazing. It is part of the long love bombing process. I didn't know that then the change. But I was aware enough that happened. It was starting to happen to relationships. And I thought in my last one that I'm going to be different. I'm going to be me. I'm going to allow myself to be who I really am. And I got caught out again. At the end of that one, it's like, no more. I am done with this. I'm never repeating that again. So I stepped back and I thought, right, I need to take responsibility. I'd written Finding Lily at this point. I was writing the A to Z of emotional abuse, and at the end of it, there were various healing modalities in there. And one of the things that I've said is, like, what if this was a mirror, that you're actually looking at yourself and, they're mirroring to you all these amazing qualities that they're telling you that you've got, and that's how they trap you. You're thinking at the end of the relationship, I'm a really awful person. I can't have a relationship. It's all my fault. And you've taken the blame for absolutely everything. You've just literally had a pile of poo dumped on you. It's like some tractor has picked up all the manure out of the yard and just tipped it, and you just happen to be standing underneath it. You've got everything. You were given everything. And that isn't just a smell that you walk away with. This goes right down to cellular level. And you repeat what you've been told. You believe this is all your fault. And there's something in your mind that, like a little runner on a set of a TV or a film, that goes off looking for all of the examples. A statement will come to you, and that's because I'm whatever it is. And off your little runner goes in your mind through all the filing cabinets where all the information is held, and it finds all of the examples where you are that person. It ignores all the good stuff. It finds all the bad stuff. It's looking for those reference points. So when I do that work, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reframe it, or we're not just reframing it. We're healing the wounds. We're removing the wounds. That's the most important part. We're removing the wounds. We're going back to where that originates from as well. Every scenario it relates to, back to where it originates. So the power comes from claiming back and becoming who we are. If you take your laptop in, or you can even do it yourself, like you can take the whole thing back to factory settings, and in a way that's what we're doing. We're clearing all of the viruses that have been set off inside ourselves, all of those negative patterns and thought processes, the negative things that we've been told. And to me, when I was writing this, I was writing about taking responsibility, not taking the blame. That's something different. Taking responsibility for my own healing, and that's where it stemmed from. I'm done. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to repeat this process again, ever. The moment one person, I see that red flag, that's it. I'm done. I'm over. Because the red flag is a red flag. A person sees that behaviour is okay, and they might modify it for a period of time until they slip back into their own ways. There's not a compatibility there. There's not an energetic compatibility. They can pretend to be someone they're not. For me, it's about taking responsibility for the role I played in that relationship. And the role I played in that relationship was that I had no boundaries, or the ones that I did have were knocked over, and I didn't have the courage to say anything. I saw the red flags. I called them out. 1, 2, 3. When the fourth one came, I overrode it, and I overrode every single red flag after that. And it was easy then, because that boundary was, that boundary and every boundary was gone by then, been bulldozed down. And then it becomes a game, and you not even sometimes very slowly hand over your power. Sometimes it's sucked out of you. When you have nothing to give someone and a relationship is conditional, the balance of power shifts very, very quickly. Part of taking responsibility. It's taking the responsibility not for the relationship, for the role that I played. And when I talk about honest conversations, another healing modality, a course that I run, I teach people how to do this. This is because I remember sitting in a therapy session with a counsellor. I can't remember how many weeks we were in, 4, maybe 5. I made a comment. He said to me, "That's not the person that you've been describing." And I said, "Sorry." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "So up until this point, you've been describing this person, your ex, as this amazing person who did this, who did that. The person you're describing today isn't that person." And it came to me at that point, one, there has to be a trust from day one. When you're seeing a counsellor, it takes a time to build that trust. Part of it is the brainwashing, the gaslighting, the triangulation, everything that was done to you puts you in a position that you think this is all your fault. And to have an honest conversation, the only real person I realised, so let me reframe that, the only person I realised that you could be really honest with was yourself, because you can have these conversations, we're having them multiple times a day, so we can be honest with ourselves, perhaps through shame or betrayal or abandonment, these wounds that we have. We can't be as honest with people. Ask yourself this honestly: how much have you told your friends and family about what happened, about the abuse that actually took place? And then ask yourself why that you can't do that. Is it because you feel shame, what they will think of you? You know, there are so many people that have been in abusive relationships, been duped by narcissistic personalities, sociopathic personalities, psychopathic personalities, that say, "I've got this responsibility, I look after this business, I am, responsible for X amount of people. How did I get duped into this?" And there's a lot of shame that comes with these relationships. So honestly, ask yourself, if you've been in any form of counselling or therapy, how honest were you? Maybe you were 75% honest, maybe you were 95% honest. There will be something, a percentage that you've held back. I might be wrong. That is why the only person you can be really honest with is yourself. And it might be uncomfortable even having those conversations with yourself. And you don't have to have them out loud. You can have them in your head. After all, you're talking to yourself constantly, telling yourself all the things that other people have told you. Try and be really honest with yourself. And that, to me, is taking responsibility for the role that I played, for the role that you played in the relationship. Not saying take responsibility for the abuse. Now, what is the difference between taking responsibility and taking the blame? Taking the blame is something along the lines of something happened that you're used to taking that. It's a self-esteem thing. It probably comes from childhood. It might be something that you've heard. It might be that you were the scapegoat within the family. The blame was put on your shoulders. You might have heard things like, "You should know better," and other people got away with whatever they did. And it might not have been there. You might not have been involved. You might not have known anything about it. But being the scapegoat in a family unit means that you get blamed for everything. And because you're a child, how would you know any better? So as you go into adult relationships and teenage relationships and you start to learn about things, the dynamic will be you're always the fool person. Not fool, F-A-L-L, not fool, F-O-O-L. Fool guy, the fool person, the person that steps up and takes responsibility. You're used to it. That's the label you were given. That was the role that you played. And that is what you got used to. So when someone tells you all these bad things, you think, I'm making an assumption that you're thinking this. It's something that I felt. Yeah, makes sense. So I take the response. I didn't actually think about it in this way, but on a subconscious level, it wasn't an unfamiliar feeling. And this is what it's all about. Okay, some of these things aren't unfamiliar. That's how we end up in these relationships. It might be that you say, growing up, I took the blame for everything. It's my natural position. So when somebody blames me, it's like, well, I've always taken the blame. Again, it's subconscious. You don't think about it, but it's natural for you. So taking responsibility for healing that wound, this isn't taking the blame for the relationship. This is taking responsibility responsibility for recognizing the wounds that you need to heal. And there's a massive difference. And by taking that responsibility and acknowledging, okay, I played this role because it was natural to me. It felt familiar. I was always blamed as a child. I didn't even know that it wasn't a thing to not be my fault, that somebody else was actually at fault. I always thought it was always my fault. So then saying, okay, now I recognize that I've taken the responsibility for this relationship. I've taken the blame for it collapsing. It's my fault. Then having these honest conversations and seeing where it wasn't your fault, changing the way that you speak about things, writing out a timeline is so powerful, where you can start slotting in things that happened and you can start to see the role that you played within that. It was you taking the blame, and then you can start to unpick. And once you start to unpick, then the power comes in. Once you start to change the way you speak and think and look and feel about the situation, about the person, then you start to claim back your power. That is where the healing happens, the massive healing, the healing that goes backwards and the healing that goes forwards on that ancestral line that you're on. And this is a vibration, and this is a ripple, and that vibration ripples backwards and forwards along that line, healing, breaking and dissolving the trauma, the wounding that happened. And there is the power. And this isn't from an ego place. This is because you want to do it and you never want to repeat it again. And you don't want your children and your grandchildren, your great grandchildren repeating these patterns, having these wounds, because you're at this pivotal point in your life. The decisions you make with regard to your healing have a direct result on your future and the future generations. I hope this has made sense. I hope it's been helpful. And as always, I'm sending you loads and loads of love. Until next time.